What's good, Phantom friends? We're back, and it's review time. I know this is pretty collectively everybody's favorite type of videos from me, so I'm happy to say that I am getting out of my rut, and I'm starting to feel like I'm putting out content that I can be proud of. Speaking of which, I got a new camera. I am no longer recording on my phone. Yes, I have been recording on my phone for the last 4 or 5 years, so tell me what you think of the quality. Is anything better? Anyway, today we will be diving into the something that is the 1983 Phantom of the Opera TV movie starring Maximilian Schnell. As I said, this was a made-for-TV movie that is a bit lesser known unless you're pretty involved in the fandom, but pretty highly regarded by those who know it as far as I've seen. But let me tell you, if you have only ever seen the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, prepare to be confused, because this film is a ride. I'll put my usual spoiler warning on this, as this does have a very different type of storyline than most Phantom films, just in case you haven't seen it yet. But let's get into it. So this film, starring Maximilian Schnell and Jane Seymour, no, not that Jane Seymour, and is actually set at the Budapest Opera House in Hungary, which I think is a very interesting and cool choice. Normally we get Phantom reset to London or something of that nature, so I actually really liked this breath of fresh air. So the scene opens. Our Eric, named Sandor Corvan this time, is out here already looking pretty questionable pre-deformity with this mad scientist hair and dark circles under his eyes. I'm getting Mr. Hyde vibes, not Phantom, but okay then. Now, the movie starts off a little weird, so bear with me. Corvan/Eric is actually married at the beginning of this film. His wife Elena is an opera singer who is about to make her debut as, of course, Marguerite and Faust. But poor Miss Elena out here is really on the struggle bus with the recitative before the Jewel song aria, and everyone's like, yikes. In this film, Corvan is the conductor for the opera house, so it's a little obvious that there's some strong nepotism involved. Elena is pretty much aware of this, so she's hella nervous about her debut. She knows she's not ready. And then, to make things worse, you bring in this sleazy douchebag, aka the Baron, who owns the opera house, I guess, hitting on Elena. And when she tells him to swerve, a lot more politely than I would have, he, of course, gets pissed and promises to ruin her career. Because she wouldn't cheat on her husband with his co-worker. Calm down there, P. Diddy. Corvan is naturally pretty f***ing pissed. Anger he takes out on this whatever the hell he's sculpting here. Also, I guess with a little sexy time, because apparently this Eric gets action.
I f*** hard.
Now, Schnell's Eric pegs me as creepy well before he ever becomes the Phantom. His voice and just the way he walks around with this dark, creepy look on his face gives me these weird, almost predatory vibes from the get-go. And it just really put me on edge and didn't make him super likable or someone that you wanted to have sympathy for later. He's also really pushy about Elena singing, to a point where I don't think she ever actually wanted to, and he just went full stage parent on her. She's really mousy and just looks absolutely miserable anytime she sings. So far, I was just feeling really uncomfortable, but here's when I just straight up laughed. Because Elena is super underconfident, without her knowledge, Corvan hires a professional clapper to make sure that there's a lot of applause to encourage her. Is this a thing? I've acted since I was 6, and I have never heard of people that you pay to give applause. But alright. Well, little do Corvan and Elena know, Sleazy Guy has paid people to boo her on stage, but for some reason they wait until the final trio, which is literally the finale of the opera. Why wouldn't they have done this right away? You watch the whole opera and then you decide she sucks? Anyway, Sleazeball has also paid off the papers to write bad reviews of her, and it is so funny listening to someone with a really surface level understanding of singing try to critique someone.
Miss Corvan, who has little talent and even less of a voice, was forced to sing out in the upper register.
That phrase is just so awkward and a complete nothing burger of a statement. I know this is all probably lost on somebody not in the industry, but trust me when I say that the screenwriters were clearly just grasping at straws for musical phrases to make themselves seem like they knew what they were talking about. It's pretty cringe. It gives me the same weird ick as when the principal in the movie The Happening comes in and starts talking about the head of schools.
I spoke with the head of schools.
Shout out to Jamie French for making me aware of that little treasure. It also resurfaces my trauma of Randy on American Idol starting the word control in regard to singing. Oh, nice control. That's not a thing. It literally just means staying on pitch, or maybe congrats, your voice didn't crack. Pro tip, never use that word control around a professional singer. It is the surest way to look like an amateur. And if your voice teacher uses that word, run. Anyway, rant over. It just irks me so bad. Well, after a bunch of other horrible comments, Elena decides the only sensible thing to do is yeet herself off a bridge. Like, damn. I guess being comforted by your creepy husband probably wouldn't have helped much, but... girl. It just gets real dark real quick. And this is Corvan, the loving husband's reaction to seeing his dead wife at the morgue. So now Corvan is out for revenge, and he starts with the professional clapper by going full 80s axe murderer on him. Then he confronts the guy who published the article, but he rats out the sleazy douchebag as being the one who actually wrote it. Nevertheless, Corvan decides these sons of a bitches are going down. But in the process, he knocks over some etching acid. And boom. Now he's disfigured. Damn near a carbon copy of the Hammer film. The place then catches on fire, where he's saved by this mysterious rando, who, instead of taking him to a hospital, takes him down to the cellars of the opera house. So sanitary. No, he couldn't have possibly gotten an infection and went into septic shock. But their dynamic is very similar to that of Professor Petrie and the dwarf from the Hammer film, just way more toxic. And now, time jump. It's 4 years later, and the opera house is performing Faust again. Naturally, Corvan is going to have some feelings about this. Now, the Carlotta figure in this film, Brigida, who is obviously singing the role of Marguerite, is absolutely fabulous and really reminds me of Minnie Driver's version of Carlotta. She even also has throat spray. But this whole rant that she goes on just had me absolutely rolling.
Isn't it bad enough that I must sing with a chorus of yelping puppies, that they give me a hideous costume to wear, a wig that looks like a wig?
Is it the wiggiest wig you've ever seen? Sorry, if you don't watch Jamie French, that joke just went completely over your head. Let's go with a different reference.
Wig, 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 wig.
But anyway, this production is being overseen by who will inevitably become our Raoul character, Michael Hartnell. And this guy, he looks like Newt Scamander if he were a pretentious prick. And it kills me. So he's holding understudy auditions, which is where we run into our Christine for the first time. Her name is Maria in this film, which makes one particular Quora question I reacted to suddenly make way more sense. Yes, I had already seen the film, I just forgot. Maybe this is one of those films I just chose to purge from my brain. But Maria isn't the sweet little quiet thing we're used to. Mindful and demure are out the window. She's actually a conniving little bitch, actually reminding me a bit more of Asia Argento's Christine. So, yikes. She sends this other girl out before her, pretending like she's doing her a favor, but really she just wants to be the last one that Michael hears. And this guy calls her out on it, but she says,
"Her voice is better than it sounds."
What kind of backhanded compliment is that? And when Maria gets up there, she is absolutely a joke that I should keep to myself. But she is brown-nosing him so hard it's coming up his throat, and oh my god, does he call her out on it. Including telling her that she's a basic bitch for Faust being her favorite opera. Excuse me? I take offense to that, sir. Two scenes you can't beat in opera. Lucia's mad scene from Lucia di Lammermoor, and the final trio of Faust. I will die on this hill. Well, she finally starts singing and naturally blows everyone away, including Corvan. But of course, he's just reminded of his late wife, and so he begins to spiral, making all of these nefarious plans, which he monologues to his pet burb over here. You know ravens can talk, right? It's not the pet to be telling your secrets to. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is kind of a one-off thing, and not very important to the plot, but this next scene just makes me laugh. Maria Christine mentions the opera ghost, which then sets Michael Rowell off on a tangent about how he doesn't believe in ghosts, and that all opera houses have ghosts.
Paris, Milan, even Covent Garden has its ghost.
He said Paris. So canonically, that means Corvan is not actually Eric. This means that there are at least two poor disfigured souls out there living beneath opera houses. Eric and Corvan clearly need to get together and have tea and biscuits. What's amazing is that LaRue Eric is arguably the more sane of the two. Seriously, I would not touch Corvan with a 10-foot pole, and it has nothing to do with his face. You'll understand why the further we go. Not that I would take Michael either. This is kind of an everybody sucks here situation. Corvan's storyline actually follows more closely to the original rumor that supposedly inspired the LaRue novel, where Eric was, from what I understand, in love with a ballerina that died. We can fight semantics on whether or not Eric was as LaRue swore he was, or if he was based on this rumor, but another time. But after a bit of back and forth, Maria and Michael finally find their footing with each other, and have dinner together, very awkwardly serenaded by this guy. The banter between them is actually pretty funny, and we really see that Maria's a bit of a firecracker, even dropping little hints that make whether or not she's a virgin pretty ambiguous. It's interesting and actually kind of refreshing. That sassy part of her is a little bit more relatable to me now as an adult, whereas LaRue Christine was solid me up until probably age 25. But their little love story starts to bloom, and even though Corvan isn't actually in love with Maria in this, he's still like, absolutely not. But regardless, he starts to put his plans to have Maria take over as the lead into motion. He sends Brigida a note basically hinting that she's about to be unalived if she sings, but she just assumes it was Maria.
This conniving slut sent me a note.
This woman had me in tears. Brigida is my favorite character by far in this film, and she does not get enough screen time. But Maria isn't taking this lightly.
You cannot learn musical genius.
But I can learn from your mistakes.
You have a suggestion as to what I should do with my voice?
Since you ask, if I were you, I'd have it pulled.
Yes! We love a Christine with a backbone. It's after that that Maria gets home and has her first encounter with Orpheus, as Corvan calls himself. And as if it isn't creepy enough to break into someone's house looking like Uncanny Valley Zorro, he, for absolutely no logical reason, decides to take the head off of Maria's doll that she's been hiding her life savings in. Very strange tactic to get someone to trust you, but no one said I'm an expert on being normal. But he gives her the key to his old house, which is where they're going to have lessons. Which, I guess, makes sense, until you realize that he's just trying to relive his relationship with Elena vicariously through Maria. He even makes her wear her old clothes anytime that she's in the house. Yikes on frickin' trikes, dude. We then get a lesson montage that is only interrupted by freaking rats inside Marguerite's jewelry box while Brigida is singing. Another callback to Jamie French's channel here. She does a female protagonist fall compilation every time she does a review, so why don't we take a page out of her book and have a compilation of all the rat appearances in Phantom Media that we've reviewed so far. And we'll just add to it as we inevitably encounter more together. Well, Brigida quits over this, I guess. I mean, my grandma once called 911 over rats, so I guess I get it. And Maria secures Marguerite. And to celebrate, I guess, that calls for a bad tings scene between Maria and Raoul. I keep calling him Raoul. His name is Michael, but screw it. Which Corvan creepily watches. Now, I don't know what the hell was up with this next scene, but it takes place in a dimly lit Turkish bathhouse with a bunch of creepy old naked dudes swimming around. I guess that's where Argento got his inspiration, but at least it was well lit enough to not look like they were swimming in the catacombs. For a second, I actually thought that there were people just swimming naked in the catacombs. But Michael is there, and Corvan comes up and tries to strangle him because he's being a distraction to Maria. He then tells Michael to leave her alone and just dips. And then Michael decides that the best course of action is to be a complete dingleberry to Maria and have her debut postponed. I feel like this is the exact opposite of what you should be doing, but okay. And now Corvan is mad at Maria too for her little sleepover and locks her out of the house. Everyone is just generally pissy now. But that brings us to the masquerade. Now, the masquerade is something. Maria invited Corvan for some strange reason, I guess to apologize. But we get there and we're just in for a real treat. We immediately have Penguin Guy, who clearly ordered his costume from Spirit Halloween, also creepy Raggedy Ann clown. But Maria's vibin', having a good time, until Corvan shows up. Corvan's getup is very reminiscent of the Weber musical's Red Death costume, just black, and he's back with his weirdly human mask with permanent resting bitch face. Here's where the good time comes to a complete halt. Corvan threatens to unalive her if she sees Michael again, and will unalive any man she sees. Well, and he's all like, "You'll be with me forever." He's clearly very invested in the idea that this is Elena, but also not. Because I feel like he wouldn't want to, unalive Elena. Doesn't make much sense, but then again, I'm also not completely insane. Although some would beg to differ. So, understandably so, Maria bolts. Unfortunately, she is then kidnapped by sleazy douchebag, but surprise! It's kidnapception, because the rando from earlier took over the carriage to take both Maria and douchebag to the catacombs. Ugh, there is so much happening. Maria somehow escapes, but Sleazeball just kind of hangs his head and goes with it. Like, no fighting back at all. But Maria doesn't escape for long because Corvan pulls the old 1-2 step on her with some good old chloroform. And so she's assed out in the catacombs while Sleazeball is tied to a chair. Corvan makes him think that he's letting him go so that he can restore Elena's good name and bring Maria to stardom. But he of course has a trick up his sleeve, where the random hobo friend locks him in his carriage with Corvan's attack burb, who goes full Alfred Hitchcock on him. Corvan then hangs the guy, Joseph Bouquet style, from a set piece. Oof. Well, now, of course, Michael is getting a little suspicious after the cleaning ladies spill all the tea on Elena and Corvan, especially when they mention how similar Maria looks to Elena. The gears are starting to turn. At this point, Elena is 100% trapped in the cellars, and Corvan goes and gets all weird about it, saying that she has to stay down there so that he can protect her from the world. His motives are all over the place. First he wanted her, in stardom, and now he wants to hide her away where nobody can ever see her again. Again, the logic of a psycho's brain is an enigma. Now here's a moment where, fight or flight music edition came in for me, because Corvan starts playing something on the organ that immediately had me going, the fuck? I know this. Where have I heard this? It's the piece you hear in the background during the entirety of the game, Return of the Phantom. But anyway, the writers are about to go full LaRue on us, which I can actually appreciate. He starts telling Maria about how he's not really evil, and inside he's actually good and wants to live like everyone else. And have a woman to walk with on Sundays. I guess he's over Elena. But Maria's not having any of this, and so after some weird moaning from Corvan, she yanks off his mask, revealing a pretty impressive deformity. He then goes on to recite Eric's dialogue from the novel almost word for word, including the whole, perhaps there's another mask behind it. It's very satisfying. Although I'm very glad that they didn't do the making her dig her nails into his face thing. I think we can all live without that visual. But as we know, Maria is a bit feistier than Christine. So when she drops Eric's mask into the fire, which I've never seen done anywhere else, so good on them, it's clearly out of spite. But the tension is still really giving me that LaRue energy, so I'm actually really feeling the scene. Until, oh my god, he kept Elena's dead body, what the fuck? His plan here is he's willing to dump his dead wife's corpse in the river instead of just giving her a proper, respectful burial. So that when they go looking for Maria, they'll think she's dead. I mean, he literally just chonks her in there. How did he preserve her body for 4 years? Corvan's mental gymnastics here are impressive. God, I hope the original reason for keeping the body wasn't so he could go all a little piece of heaven. If you know, you know. Where are my Avenged Sevenfold fans at? But up above, Michael has been doing his homework on the Opera House, and he's figured out the riddle of Corvan signing his notes Orpheus. If you aren't familiar with the story, the Greek mythological character Orpheus went down into the depths of the underworld to save his wife Eurydice. So, because Corvan's wife is dead and now lives under the Opera House, you get it. Like I said, Michael has cracked the case, so he's now going down into the cellars, past all of these homeless people that have just never said a word as Corvan comes and goes. But uh-oh, random hobo man sees, and he and Michael get into this super climactic fight. And I guess Corvan got a little pissed because he just straight up left him at the organ with a knife in his back. Well, Maria is rescued and the body is recovered, so Corvan's original plan has gone up in flames. Michael then decides to go full Weber row, even though this film predates the musical by 3 years, and decides to use Maria as bait to catch Corvan. But she's not on stage, she's just sitting in a box? But Corvan means serious business, as you can tell from his little hat toss here, because his next move is to hand saw the chandelier down. But oh no, Maria has decided to move and take a seat in the middle of the audience, just beneath it. But thanks to the power of plot armor, she notices way before anyone else and gets out of the way just in time. The chandelier then falling with Corvan on it, and thus subsequently meeting his demise. And that's the way the cookie crumbles, or in this case, the chandelier. That was a really terrible joke, and I don't know if I'm going to leave it in. I don't know about you guys, but this version was just a lot for me. It weirded me out, like not in a good way, from start to finish. Like I said, for me, Corvan was never a sympathetic character at any point, even though I think they were trying to make him one. Even before he became the opera ghost, he was a dude you would never want to run into in a dark alley, or at all. His love for Elena never seemed genuine, just very pushy and self-serving. Honestly, he acted like he was holding her hostage. There was just no chemistry there, and it felt very off. I don't know if the writers meant for him to be a walking red flag from the very beginning, but if not, whoops. Now, I admit I haven't seen any of his other work, but based solely on this performance, I think Maximilian Schnell was better suited for true villain roles, not Byronic hero or anti-hero. I think he would have made a great Mr. Hyde in a Jekyll and Hyde film. Like, perfection. It's not his skills as an actor that are the problem. It was just a slight miscast. Unless they wanted him to be a creep the whole time. In that case, they nailed it. I just wish there had been a bigger difference between Corvan the husband and Orpheus the opera ghost. I would have liked to have seen a very clear shift from this bright, happy, almost happy-go-lucky, adoring husband to complete mental break, descent into madness over the death of his wife. Like the Claude Rains film, just the latter half way darker. A great guy who just snapped. I feel like I shouldn't have been tense watching the Eric figure interacting with his wife. The film also generally felt a little all over the place to me, from the very weird dynamic between Maria and Michael and the random hobo that they never actually explain. Give me your thoughts. I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. Please make sure to subscribe and follow all of my socials, including my Patreon, if you would like to support the channel. But other than that, stay fantastic with a PH, and keep your hand at the level of your eyes. We get Phantom... Hello, cat. No, this is not the time.